Good morning. Thank you, Chairwoman Luna, Ranking Member Crockett, and members of the task force for giving us the opportunity to testify today. My name is Jeffrey Nusatelli. I'm a former military police officer with 16 years of active duty service in the U.S. Air Force. I'm here today because the American people have both the right and the responsibility to know the truth about unidentified aerial phenomenon. That truth remains hidden, classified and silenced by fear, retaliation, stigma, and confusion. Today, we are here to help break that silence. Between 2003 and 2005, 5 UAP incidents occurred at Vandenberg Air Force Base, home to the National Missile Defense Project, a top national security priority. At the time, we were conducting launches deemed by the National Reconnaissance Office as the most important in 25 years. These were historic launches. These facilities were vital, and they were repeatedly visited by UAP. Each incident was witnessed by multiple personnel, documented, investigated, and reported up the chain of command. We sent information up, but we got no guidance down on how to handle these events. I personally witnessed one of these events and investigated others as they occurred. 6 other service members have provided me with the information that I will share with you today. The incursions began on October 14, 2003, when Boeing contractors reported a massive glowing red square silently hovering over 2 missile defense sites. After several minutes, it drifted further east onto the base and vanished over the hills. This event, now known as the Vandenberg Red Square, was referenced by Representative Luna at the first hearing on this topic. Official Air Force records of this event are in possession by Aero and the FBI. Later that night, while I was on duty, security guards at a critical launch site reported a bright, fast-moving object over the ocean. I responded to the incident. Chaos ensued over the radio as the object approached rapidly. I heard my friends screaming, "It's coming right at us, it's coming right for us, and now it's right here." Moments later, I heard them say that it had shot off and was gone. When I arrived on scene, I talked to 5 shaken witnesses who described a massive triangular craft larger than a football field that hovered silently for about 45 seconds over their entry control point before shooting away at impossible speed. About a week later, another patrol reported a light over the ocean, behaving erratically. Believing it might be an unannounced aircraft, they declared an emergency, and an armed response force responded. Before the forces could arrive, the object descended and either landed or hovered on our flight line, and then took off again at impossible speed. The witnesses to this event were threatened and intimidated afterward. They were told to keep quiet and think about what they were reporting. After that, things did get quiet until about 2005, when another patrol reported a massive triangular craft larger than a C-130 silently floating over the installation. He watched it for a few minutes. It traveled west and disappeared into the night. And then I had my own encounter, again in 2005. I was off duty, sitting in my backyard with 2 other police officers when we noticed what first appeared to be a satellite in orbit, but it wasn't acting like a satellite. The light was strange, it was pulsing, and then it started to maneuver. It dropped in elevation. At times it would vanish from view and reappear in a different location in the sky, and eventually it reappeared 200 feet over my house. It was a 30-foot diameter sphere of light. My friends and I watched it for a moment, and then it gently accelerated and traveled up and disappeared into the stars. These events profoundly changed my life and the lives of my friends. We stand at a pivotal moment in history. The question is no longer whether these events are real, but whether we have the courage to face them. True leadership requires vision, a willingness to confront the unknown with transparency and resolve. So I ask the Congress to help we, the people, enact this vision. There are 3 goals. fund independent research, and treat UAP study with the same seriousness as we would any other scientific field. 2, end secrecy and overclassification. Transparency is the foundation of truth. Without it, witnesses like us are dismissed. 3, protect the witnesses. Many stay silent out of fear for their careers, reputations, and the safety of their families. Protect them, and you will embolden others to join this cause. These phenomena challenge our deepest assumptions about reality, consciousness, and our place in the universe. Exploring them can unlock transformative breakthroughs in technology, biology, and human understanding. Let this be the moment when America chooses courage over fear, transparency over secrecy, and progress over stagnation. Let's show the world that our nation leads not only through strength, but through fearless pursuit of the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nusatelli.
All right, guys. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So we are going to be, first of all, thank you everybody for joining me this morning. We're going to be exploring one of the most controversial and one of the most fascinating topics of our time, like especially to me. I don't know about you guys. But this is a intersection of modern UAP disclosures. We're going to look at Charles Hall's account of the tall whites, an ancient text from the Bible to the Book of Enoch, and then we're going to cross-reference it to Sumerian Anunnaki myths. You know, the goal here is not to tell what to believe, but basically like just to lay out some parallels. You know, the tension and the questions, so we can actually like use some critical thinking about what humanity has been, like what we've been seeing and saying for thousands of years. What's really true, what's not true, who's crazy and who's not crazy. So, I mean, we just want to put the evidence out there for you so you could decide for yourself. But one thing that I want people to understand is that this evidence is out here and it's very real. And we have very credible people out here testifying about it. So let's get back into some of these testimonies, man. I want y'all to really get to see right now what's going on and why it matters, why I think it's crazy that nobody is talking about this. It's crazy to me, right? First of all, why does it matter? So this month we just had the U.S. House Oversight Committee held a hearing on UAPs, which stands for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon, basically what we used to call UFOs. They're basically just trying to change the name to make it sound nicer. So now they don't sound like a quack job saying it. You know, you seen a UFO, a UAP just sounds better. That's just how we do with words, right? We change the word and make it sound different. So we changed the name from UFOs to UAPs now. And the UAPs, they changed the name to Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon, when we really know it's just an unidentified flying object, right? We just keep it the same. But they changed the name because more credible people are coming out now. So they're not just the quack jobs that we used to see back in the 60s and 70s where we used to be like, oh, this guy's crazy. Now you have Air Force generals, you have Navy officers, you have top commanders, people who study physics, people that study, you know, all types of things, and they're actually coming out and they're speaking on what they've seen. So let's listen to some of it real quick.
Please hold on here. I now recognize Chief Wiggins for his opening statement.
Chief Wiggins.
Please press your button. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairwoman Luna, Ranking Member Crockett, and members of the task force and the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Alexandra Wiggins. I'm an active duty U.S. Navy Operations Specialist, Senior Chief Petty Officer, father of 3, and dedicated American testifying today in my personal capacity. The views I share are my own, and I do not represent the official positions of the Department of the Navy or any subordinate organization. On the evening of February 15th, 2023, at approximately 19:15 PST, in the Whiskey 291 warning area off the coast of Southern California, I was serving on board USS Jackson. During that period, I moved between the Interior Communications Center, ICC-1, and the bridge wing, correlating the sensor picture with visual observations, part of my routine responsibilities for surface and air picture management. What I observed and what our crew recorded was not consistent with conventional aircraft or drones as they appear on our system. A self-luminous tic-tac shaped object emerged from the ocean before linking up with three other similar objects. The four then disappeared simultaneously with a high synchronized, near instantaneous acceleration. I observed no sonic boom and no conventional propulsion signatures, no exhaust plume, no control surface articulation on the Sapphire image system. Shortly after the synchronized departure, radar tracks dropped. These observations were multi-sensor and recorded inside of ICC-1 with time location overlay visible in our source frames that have been made public by journalists. From my experience operating in this region over many years and consistent with our public characterized encounters, unidentified objects reoccur in United States operation areas off Southern California. That fact alone does not tell us what they are, but it does argue the systematic stigma-free reporting and for the preservation of sensor data so analysts can evaluate safe and intelligence implications with rigor. I want to underscore 3 points for the task force and the committee. Aviation and maritime safety. When crews and watchstanders observe objects that maneuver or accelerate in ways that does not match known profiles and do so near our ships and aircraft, that is first and foremost a safety issue. Standardized checklists and training should ensure we capture the best possible sensor data in real time, including IR settings, slant range estimates, and bearing and range altitude snapshots.
So break it down, because he's using a lot of military talk and military jargon, but what he's basically saying is anytime that when they're out to sea and they encounter something in the airspace that they don't recognize, they don't understand, that it is their job, it is their protocol to begin tracking these things with high-tech instruments. They're using many different sensors, many different radar systems. They're using a lot of technology we don't understand.
Shots and immediate chain of custody for any recordings. Reporting without stigma, protection without retribution. Sailors need to know that reporting UAP encounters will not harm their careers. Congress can help by reinforcing witness protection and by directing the relevant office to maintain confidential, destigmatized channels for service members who step forward with data. Declassification and transparency where possible. The task force declassification mission is directly relevant here, where operational security permits releasing metadata preserved sensor excerpts or at least technical summaries would improve public trust and accelerate outside scientific scrutiny. That includes, when feasible, the time geo-reference IR frames and radar parameters needed for independent analysis. To be clear, I am not here to make claims beyond my lane. I am here to provide a first-hand account of what I saw, what our systems recorded, and why it matters for safety, for intelligence, and public confidence. My request to you is practical. Help us capture, protect, fairly evaluate the evidence, and provide a safe pathway for those in uniform to report it. In closing, I want to thank the committee and the task force for holding this hearing. and for placing this discussion in a forum where evidence can be examined carefully and openly. I appreciate your attention and stand ready to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
So let's get into some of this, man. What are we talking about, man? The reason why I thought this was interesting, because as I began some of my journey through religion, I started going through some of the ancient texts and some of the older manuscripts that came out before the religion was taken over by the Romans. I wanted to see, what did the Hebrews believe in? Where were some of the stories and things that they told? So I got to reading some of the Hebrew literature. That took me down to the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jasher, Jubilees, all of these different books. And in those books, I started to see a lot of correlation to some of the things that people believed in, some of the science fiction, some of the things that people have just been saying over the years. So I wanted to take a look at that. Let's see, are there any parallels in the Bible that can maybe back up some of these things that we're seeing, right? Because what do we know so far, right? We know that the U.S. House recently held a hearing called Restoring Public Trust Through UAP Transparency and Whistleblower Protection. Now, in that hearing, there was concerns about how much information government agencies and intelligence communities have withheld regarding unidentified anomalous phenomenon, aka UFOs. Whistleblowers testified, and there's increasing pressure for declassification of the information that they have. Now, one of the dramatic pieces of evidence shown was a video of a Hellfire missile striking a UAP, an orb, off the coast of Yemen, and the orb appears to bounce off and continues on its path. For those that didn't see it, let's find that real quick for you guys so that you can see it. Let's see. I think they have
drones
it laid out
as they
somewhere. Here we go.
Wouldn't surprise you, I tell you. You call it the VVSS team.
Yeah, like 22,000 feet.
That's the object here.
That took off earlier.
He said that thing took off earlier.
If we can get rid of the audio real quick. Mr. Wiggins and Mr. Knapp, we'll get back to what that video was
That's
in a
not
moment, but
even
we
the
just
clip
want to make
that I
sure that
wanted y'all
it
to
was
see.
entered into the record, as well as all the documents. Those will be able to be publicly found for everyone in the country to view. If we could, Mr. Knapp.
There we go.
This is when it zoomed out, so you can still see it traveling. So, look, I'm not jumped to the conclusion that I believe that there are, aliens coming from another planet, but I'm open to that. And I think that it's our responsibility, especially when we're seeing that we have a government that is actively blocking information from us. Just last night, I tried to get an amendment onto the National Defense Authorization Act that fit in the jury. So you'll see exactly what it does.
There goes the video clip from the beginning. Now it's just flying along, and up on the top left, you're going to see the missile comes from the top left on your screen. See it? Missiles right here. Missiles getting ready to impact. Bang. You see the missile is right here. Can y'all, hopefully y'all can see that. The missile impacted right here. I mean, it hit it and it bounced off right there. You can see this is the object. We don't know what it is. They say it's a ship. It looks like a ship to me once it starts moving. There's some 3 pieces right here, which is kind of crazy when you watch these 3 pieces, because it looks like it gets stuck in the gravitational field of this ship or this object, and it follows it. See? See, it's like it's stuck in the gravitational field of this object. Then they're going to zoom out, and you're going to see the ship right here again.
This is when it zoomed out.
So it
You can still
stumbled,
see it traveling.
and then it got right back on its path, right along its way, like nothing ever happened.
So, Mr. Knapp,
So, I don't know what y'all think that is, but it's only one thing that it can be to me. I mean, it looks like a spacecraft of some sort that's flying. I mean, I don't know, man. My brother Larry said that Jasher is an amazing book. People can't handle the information in that book with no spirituality. That's very true. I have the Book of Jasher, the Book of Enoch, and Jubilees in a copy. And I'm going to bring up some of it, man, because some of it is very interesting, man, when you cross-reference. When you cross-reference what you see in here to what they're talking about in this committee meeting, and then when you cross-reference that with other accounts and other people, right, it starts to give you a clear picture of things, like things that you wouldn't even think, right? So let's start off with the Bible. Some key comparisons. Hush, dog. In the Bible, Genesis 6, chapter 1, verse 4 describes sons of God who saw human women. And, well, let me just bring up the verses, right? I don't know why I'm acting brand new with this. We got technology over here. Genesis 6. We'll read the King James Version since everybody like the King James Version, right? Y'all like the King James Version. All right. So, in Genesis 6, this is when they first mention something, right? Genesis 6, it said basically where we at. Let me get back to my note. Genesis 6, 1 through 4, they talk about, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair. They took them wives, all which they chose. Who are the sons of God? First of all, you got to break that down. Who's the sons of God, right? The sons of God is a biblical term primarily found in Genesis 6 and Job, with interpretations varying significantly. It can refer to powerfully or godly humans like Seth's descendants. It can refer to the members of God's heavenly councils, aka angels, or to human rulers and their patrons, meaning the sons of God. So they use them to describe many different things. So that don't really give us much evidence there yet, right? So as it goes on and it talks about how these men, or whatever they were, right, started to lay with the women, and they created these giants. They called them, like, they were giants. And so there were giants in those days. And they bore mighty men, which were of old, of the renowned, all the legends that we heard about, right? So that's the first time the Bible even talks about something new. But if you look in the Book of Enoch, mainly the first Book of Enoch, the Book of the Watchers, right? It says that there's a group of angels called the Watchers. They descended to the earth. Let's go take a look at that. I could put Enoch on the screen for y'all. The Book of Watchers. There's actually 3 books of Enoch. For those that don't know, there are 3 complete books of Enoch that we have. But Enoch said that he actually wrote 365 books. Why we don't have those, I'm not sure. But Enoch wrote a whole lot, and we didn't get that much. I'm trying to find us a complete copy so that I can read offline for y'all. But in the book of Enoch, he talks about these beings, and he calls them a specific name. He calls them the Watchers, right? And I like Enoch's story, because when you get to that part in the book of Genesis, when you get to Enoch in Genesis, it's like they just briefly talk about him, and then they just don't talk about him no more, right? It's weird how it is almost. I mean, let's take a look at it real quick. Where he first mentioned Enoch. Any Bible scholars out there that know where they first mentioned Enoch? Right here. So this is Genesis chapter 5. We're going to scroll down to verse 23. Verse 21 actually. Or you go up to 19. Jared was his father. Enoch, 800 years, begat sons and daughters, and all the days of Jared were 962 years. He died, and Enoch lived 65 years and begat Methuselah. So here's the interesting part. And Enoch walked with God after he begat Methuselah 300 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. For God took him. It didn't say he died. It didn't say, it didn't say nothing. It just said that God took him. God took him where? God took him where? We didn't, it just doesn't even tell us anything. It just says that Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. That's all it tells us. But we know later on in the story that Enoch becomes important, right? Because he is also the great-grandfather, I believe, of Noah. So Enoch is a very important character in the Bible. But for some reason, in the Bible, they kind of left him out. They left him out, even though he was would have been one of the most influential characters that you can have, right? So why was he left out? Let's talk about it. Let's take a look at what the actual Enoch says, man. We're going to look at the actual book. So this is the complete book of the Watchers, First Enoch. So Enoch 1 starts, the words of the blessings of Enoch, wherewith he blessed the elect and righteous, who will be living in the days of tribulation. We're living in the days of tribulation, when all the wicked and the godless are to be removed. And Enoch, a righteous man whose eyes were opened by God, took up his parable and said, I saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens, which the angels showed me. And from them I heard everything, and from them I understood as I saw. But not for this generation, but for a remote one, which is for to come. A remote one. Concerning the elect I said, and took up my parable concerning them, the Holy Great One will come forth from his dwelling, and the eternal God will tread upon the earth, even on Mount Sinai, and I will appear in the strength of his might from the heavens of heavens, and shall be smitten with fear, and the watchers shall quake, and great fear and trembling shall seize them unto the ends of the earth. And the high mountains shall be shaken, and high hills shall be made low, and shall melt like wax before the flame. And the earth shall be wholly rent in sunder. All that is upon the earth shall perish, and there shall be a judgment upon all. But with the righteous he will make peace, and will protect the elect, and mercy shall be upon them, and they shall all belong to God, and they shall be prospered, and they shall all be blessed, and he will help them all, and light shall appear unto them, and he will make peace unto them, peace with them. And behold, he cometh with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all, and to destroy all the ungodly, and to convict all flesh of all the work of their ungodliness, which they have ungodly committed, and of all hard things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Man, when I first read that, I was like, why did they not include this into the Bible? Like, why wouldn't they? This just lines up with everything. So let's keep reading, because this is where we get to talking about. I'm going to skip all of the creation stuff because that gets too deep for most people to even understand. But I want to talk about right here is the falling angels, because the Bible called them the sons of God. But if you really broke down the actual Hebrew words that they use to translate into sons of God, the actual Hebrew word, let me look it up, man. Let me look it up so I can tell y'all correctly. See, I have a book called the Bible Dictionary, and I highly suggest that you get one, right? So the word that we used that in the Bible to generate a falling angel or the sons of God, how they translated it in the King James, the actual Hebrew word that they used in the Bible was Nephilim. And that derives from the Hebrew root word nephal, meaning to fall. So that meant one who fell, right? So we translated that into being an angel, because only an angel could have fell from the sky, right? Only an angel could have fell from the sky. So that's what we believed for years, because, this is what we're taught. Right. But the Book of Enoch says, and it came to pass when children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. Right. That just directly mimics what we saw in Genesis 6. Right. Directly mimics what we seen in 6. And it came to pass when men began to multiply. Right. Cross-reference. You always cross-reference when you're studying. Right. You can't study without cross-referencing. You must cross-reference to make sure that you're talking about the same thing, right? So let's go back. It says, and the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. And Samjaza, who was their leader, said unto them, fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I shall have to pay the penalty of this great sin. He like, man, if we do this, man, I ain't trying to do this, because if we do this, I'm going to be the one that's going to have to take all the punishment, and I'm going to take the punishment alone, because y'all probably going to snitch, and y'all ain't going to take the blame with me, right? So they said, verse 4, they all answered him and said, let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. So they said, man, bet we got you, man. We swear, man. We gonna hold it. We gonna hold it down. We all gonna do this. We all riding. Ain't nobody snitching. So they swore all together and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And they were all in all like 200 who descended in the days of Jared. So these are the days of Jared, which we learned in Genesis 5. Where was Jared? Right, Jared was right after Mahalalel. So you had the days of Canaan, right? Canaan, then you had Mahalalel, and then Mahalalel birthed Jared, right? Jared had 2 sons. One of them, Jared, born Enoch. So it tells us during the days of Jared, this is when they started doing this, right? And these are the names of their leaders. So he tells you their leaders' names, also giving you further proof of their story. Samlazaz, their leader, Akabah, I can't pronounce all this stuff, Ramiel, Kokobel, Tamlel, Ramel, Daniel, Ezekiel, Barijah, Azael, Armoros, Badarel, Ananel, Zachlel, Samsapil, Sadarel, listen to that one, Turel, Jamjel, Sadiel. These are their chiefs of 10. Now let's break this Sadarel one. Yeah, y'all crazy. Y'all go crazy. So Sadarel, likely a misspelling of Sathariel, refers to a celestial being described in various texts, most notably as the angel of deception and confusion in the Apocrypha. In some interpretations, he is also known as the moon of God or dawn of God, and is considered a weaver of stories who spins truths into deceptive realities. He is also associated with Kil Foth, a concept of chaotic spiritual forces in certain occult traditions, right? His name was later translated into something else, but you'll figure that out. And all the others together with them took unto themselves wives, and each chose for themselves one, and they began to go into them and to devour themselves with them, and they taught them charms, enchantments, all this stuff that they taught them, right? So the Book of Enoch talks about them, these figures that fell from the sky and took for themselves wives. I got another story for y'all. We got a guy who actually lived on base with them, spoke with them, communicated with them, and did many things with them. So I want you to hear what he says they look like. I mean, and what his life was like living with them. And this man, first of all, let's go back, man, because this man is declarated
Cogni. Before we dive into today's episode of American Alchemy, I want to give a quick shout out to our amazing sponsor, Incogboard. And use code American Alchemy, or go to
on a second
claims at this point. And you've interacted with, a lot of people I interview have had fleeting interactions in one-off instances. They've been abducted by a gray, or they've, interacted with a tall white or a Nordic. You've had years of interactions with all three, but mostly with the tall whites. And I really want to dive into that. But first, I want to talk about your Hall photon theory. You believe that Einstein is wrong and has limited physics, stagnated it for the last century. And so let's get into that.
I'm quite certain Einstein was wrong. And I've also written books
Terrence Howard said the same thing, and they called him crazy.
Titled Beyond Relativity, and I've done a Rumble video entitled Mirage Galaxies and Edges in Space. Edges is spelled with capital letters because it's a zone. And I've also done a second film with Emil Marzak, which discusses that, called Walking with the Tall Whites Aftermath. And I've also, that's all copyrighted, Hall photon theory. I first copyrighted Hall photon theory in 1997, and I'm quite certain that there are many more particles, subatomic particles, and many more types of force fields which exist in the real world. And that's why relativity is not correct, because relativity doesn't take those into account.
And for context for the audience, you are extremely smart. You have a master's degree in nuclear physics, and you scored off the charts on one of these math tests before joining the Army. And so
I was in the Air Force, and what you say is correct. I got one wrong out of 500 on the Air Force math ability test. It was the one I was marking as I was marking the correct answer as the clock had sounded, and they were ripping the answer sheet from my cold hands. If they'd just given me 10 more seconds, I'd have got them all.
That's amazing. But you told me off air that what inspired this Hall photon theory was you actually seeing a
That-
craft and realizing it could go faster than light. So you were stationed at Area 51.
That's correct. Well, I was a weather observer in the U.S. Air Force, and I was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base from March of 1965 until May of 1967. And Nellis is in charge of the gunnery ranges at Indian.
So I just wanted y'all to see his background so that you know that what this man is saying is very true, is very real. He's not someone that you would think that just would make up these stories or just would be capping for internet attention or something like that. You know, he sounds like he's kind of credible. I mean, just from what I'm hearing.
Why do you think they were allowed to operate independently on kind of American military grounds? So the superiors were kind of
the
unaware,
base
or-
for them was like a foreign embassy. And they've been here since the Ice Age.
Do you think it was the nuclear testing that like created some sort of Wheeler tunnel or something that they traveled through, or like why there? Why do you think that
Just like the Men in Black movie, man. They hide it in plain sight sometimes.
they set up shop there?
Consider, I'm certain that the Greys got here first, and they were here before the last Ice Age, and that
The Greys is a specific race of the aliens that they believe exists, and he talks about several races of them that work with the military and that actually lived on a base with them.
the Tall Whites got here second, and they were here by at least the middle of the last Ice Age. And the Norwegians with 24 teeth got here towards the end of the last Ice Age.
He said the Norwegians with 24 teeth.
Tall Whites have the best technology. The Greys have really good technology. The Norwegians are just barely able to travel in space and make it here. When you look at the bases and where the Tall Whites and the Greys are, you have to look at the way they were in the Ice Age. There's a place out in the deserts that I was in. It's out in one of the most desolate sections of the western deserts that you can imagine. There's a L-shaped valley with mountains on desert mountains on both sides, and then there's a valley on the northern side. But in the southern side, the valley is an L-shaped valley, and there's a dry lake bed, a small dry lake bed on the southern side, and a huge amphitheater type set of ground that the Greys farmed during the Ice Age. And in the mountain on the west, they'd cut 13 tunnels in the mountain on the west, and they used them as a granary. And the one on the north, the first one on the north, was larger than the others, and it was large enough for their deep spacecraft to come in and pick up grain. And the 13th one overlooked the fields, and
For anyone just starting, this is an Air Force guy he was an Air Force officer. He worked in Area 51 and some of the other areas. He actually spent 3 years living with the tall white aliens that he's describing here. So I just want to keep y'all going on that, just letting y'all know where we at.
At the top of the L-shaped valley and at the bottom of the L-shaped valley, the mountains form a constriction. So if you were a gray teenager with a appropriate weapon and you were sitting there, you could monitor both entrances. And so if any Ice Age animals came in to eat the grain, because they're plant eaters, the Tall Whites and the Greys do not eat meat, they're only plant eaters, you could keep them out and keep.
So he said the Tall Whites and the Greys, races of aliens, they're both plant eaters. And when you look at some of the science behind that, there's a lot of plants and grains that we eat today that they believe that didn't generate here. They didn't originate here. They believe they came from other planets, and scientists are actually confused how we got them. Specifically, a lot of our grains. So do your research on that.
them from eating your food. And when you asked, and when you looked at the valley on the west, you could see the ancient water lines from how high the lake had been during different stages of the Ice Age. Now, central Nevada was never glaciated. It was just that in the Ice Age, because the weather was different, it rained lots and lots, like it does in Kentucky. And so those lake beds were not glacial lakes. They weren't glacial carved. They were pluvial lakes, the Latin word for rain. And therefore, those lake beds were flat, and the land leading into them were perfect places to farm. And what you were looking at was a granary, a farm that the Greys used during the Ice Age.
'51's weirdness didn't start because it's a military base. What if the base was put there because of a pre-existing weirdness in the region? As Charles points out, the broader pattern is hard to ignore. Many of the most restricted military ranges and test sites sit in the same kind of landscapes: remote deserts, mountain valleys, and high plains, and sometimes Native American burial grounds. Sure, there are practical reasons for this when it comes to testing weapons and spy planes, but often these places were tied up in UFO sightings, cryptid creatures, electromagnetic anomalies, before military bases were even placed on them. Many were even seen to be portals to other dimensions. Maybe it isn't just a coincidence. Maybe the military wasn't just picking up empty land, but claiming ground that was very unusual. To put it bluntly, maybe military bases often like to co-locate themselves with very strange paranormal areas. Skinwalker Ranch in northeastern Utah is perhaps the most public example. I've been there myself, and you've no doubt heard the stories. It's probably the most scientifically studied paranormal hotspot in the world, at least on the civil side. Multiple UFO sightings, glowing orbs, cattle mutilations, and even reports of orange portals opening up in the air. But it also has its former military connections. There was a US Army outpost in the region in the 19th century, and today it sits not far from Dugway Proving Grounds. In the 2000s, billionaire and government contractor Robert Bigelow received Pentagon funding through the OSAP program to research the ranch. Why, you might ask? Well, folklore from the Utah tribe had already marked the land as cursed, prowled by shapeshifters. That was long before the Pentagon made it a research site. And if you zoom out, the geography is interesting too. You can draw a rough triangle between Area 51, Skinwalker Ranch, and Roswell. Other paranormal hotspots with co-located military activity exist all over the United States. For example, Sedona, Arizona. Local legends speak of tunnels and gateways hidden in the cliffs, where star people pass through shimmering portals. The Bradshaw Ranch there became famous for UFO sightings, investigated not long ago by Ross Coulthard. Eventually, the site was taken over by the US government, a move that raised some eyebrows. Why seize a random rural property in Arizona unless there was something they felt needed securing? To this day, locals still report black helicopters circling overhead and interference with drones near the area. It fits the pattern. Land fenced off not just for practical reasons, but because of whatever it is said to be in the land itself. Land that seems full of electromagnetic anomalies, and perhaps the same tunnels and land that are occupied by the tall whites. And that brings us back to Nevada. It's easy to forget that Area 51 isn't just one base. It's part of a vast test range anchored by Nellis, swallowing up thousands of square miles of desert. Charles gets into this in just a moment, but the history of how this whole area ended up getting claimed by the government doesn't quite add up, especially when it became a herd of desert sheep suddenly becoming an
I'm going to keep reading so that y'all can understand why. And he taught them all kinds of costly stones, jewelry, the bling bling, and all coloring tinctures. What are coloring tinctures? Right? These are the reds, blacks, the blues, the greens, purples, all these different dyes, things like that. Why would men need that, right? Why would men need that? Why would anybody need that? You're going to find out soon. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. Samjaza taught enchantments and root cuttings. Amaros, the resolving of enchantments. So how to do away with the enchantment, whatever spells. So they taught how to put the spell on somebody and how to take the spell off. Badari Kajal taught astrology. Kokabel taught the constellations. This is how man got introduced to the stars, to the constellations, because we had no abilities to look at these things with telescopes. But yet history has shown us that somehow ancient form of men and women knew about ancient star systems that we couldn't possibly see. The reason why we knew about it was because these beings taught us, right? Ezekiel taught the knowledge of the clouds. Arakiel taught the signs of the earth. Shamshiel, the signs of the sun. And Sariel, the course of the moon. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. So just like Dr. Charles Hall talks about, we'll see here, it's the same thing. They came, they taught us. What did they teach us? A bunch of technology, a bunch of stuff we ain't know, right? Trying to advance us for some reason. Why they keep trying to advance us, we have no idea. But for some reason, these beings keep coming down. It's not the first time that they've been here. So let's talk about it. What he's saying.
Who live in the mountains like Sheep Peak, for which it's named, and the mountains to the east, must be an endangered species. You say, wait a minute, this is 1937. I didn't realize we had endangered species till 1970 or something. No, this was 1937, and by executive order said, we got to make that a protected area to protect the desert bighorn
areas
sheep.
To where people can't go
They're
there.
white.
And the excuses that
and
they
if
use
you're out there
to keep us
hiking
away
and
from
you
these
see
areas so we
something,
wouldn't run into
in the
these
words
beings.
of the park rangers, that looks like a human looking at you from over the sagebrush, which may be as tall as 6 feet, don't look back, especially if it looks like a woman with children, because the bighorn sheep don't like that. They'll attack you. Just look away and walk away. And in 1937, in order to protect the sheep, and that we're talking before World War II, Franklin Roosevelt and the Army Air Force decided that they would station a battalion of anti-aircraft guns with live ammo to protect it, okay? So in case so it wouldn't be subject to Japanese air attack.
And it was all that specific area.
In that specific area, right?
Why would this area need guns to protect it if you're just trying to protect some sheep, right? That don't even make no sense. But for some reason, that's what it was.
Yeah, that was the desert bighorn. Before there was an Area 51, before there was a Nellis gunnery range, before there was a Camp Mercury or anything, there was the Desert Southwest Game Range.
So that's the first time
And you
there.
say that, so the sheep are being protected by by an anti-aircraft crews that have live ammo, and they're open to fire at any airplane that goes across there in 1937. And FDR just said, well, I want the sheep to be safe, and that's why it's called Sheep Peak.
Wow.
And you say, when you look at it, Sheep Peak seems like a pretty easy place to climb. Why is it that the first time, it is a matter of record that it was climbed, that anyone climbed it, was 1970? Okay. You say, well, wait a minute, we did Mount Everest before that, right?
Well, it sounds like, protecting sheep with, anti-aircraft technology, the most advanced at the time.
Well, it seems like if you'd fire a few live rounds, wouldn't you kind of scare them a little bit, right? Yeah.
So based on your rule, if it's like, fool me once,
Yeah,
okay, fool me twice, fine. Fool me 3 times, that's sort of a, that's not a coincidence anymore.
Yeah.
What's the second time? Is there a second time before Area 51, which gets set up in the 50s, that suspicious military or covert activity occurs in the region that might have to do with the ET presence?
Well, remember how good their technology is. The technology of the whites and the technology of the grays. And I do not exaggerate. I speak from direct experience. When you say if they came here in the Ice Age, and they're plant eaters, and in order to get a little help with harvesting grain and doing manual labor and things like that, there's nobody out in Nevada. Where would they get that from? Remember how good their technology is. And I speak from direct experience. If they wanted to use the scout craft, which is, the tall white scout craft or the gray scout craft, both of which I've personally seen, and in the time I've been talking, if they wanted to, say, lift off from the backyard and go to the moon and circumnavigate the moon to check up on what's going on the far side of the moon and return and land in the backyard right here, they would have already done so. That's how good their technology is. One of the things I personally watched them do.
So he's saying that their technology is so cold that they could fly from here to the moon and back in the time that he has spoke that little part of the conversation. So he personally witnessed 2 or 3 races of aliens, worked with them, and he claims that the military has been harboring them for years, way back since the FDR days. And he actually worked in the Area 51 before there was Area 51, and he mentions the areas. He shows you where those areas are. Hold on, guys. We got a guest coming.
From a distance, because if you get too close, the fields will burn you like a microwave. But like from a distance of, say, like 2.5, 3 miles, was to go onto the scout craft and sit down in the seats, no seat belts or anything, just chairs like this, and power up the, not the outer coils, but just the bottom and control coils, and lift off until they were floating perhaps as far off the desert or above the sagebrush as the height the camera is, and then take a few seconds, like 30 seconds, to power up completely the outer coils. It takes a few seconds to do so. When they do so, before they do so, the craft looks the way you're expecting. If you saw a helicopter out there, you'd see the actual metal of the helicopter. But after they've powered up, they just look real fuzzy white, like a tic-tac, because they're surrounded with force fields. You no longer see the actual metal, you just see the force field and the way it's fuzzing over.
Now, remember what we saw earlier? He said it looked like a tic-tac, right? Compare that to what we saw earlier, right? He said it looked like a tic-tac with a force field. And that's what we seen in this video. It kind of looks like a tic tac with a glowing force field around it. That's where the Hellfire missile hit it, and it did nothing, absolutely nothing to it. Absolutely nothing to it, right? So that kind of confirms what he was saying, that the technology is so far advanced from anything that we've ever seen. They're able to do things that we aren't able to do, and it's getting to the point now where they can't hide it anymore. And I've had conversations with many people. Many people think that they're angels, which is understandable, because in the Book of Enoch, it tells us that they were at one point angels, right? But they ended up sin against God, and then they turned into something different, right? It says they were, verse 2 in chapter 6 of the Book of Enoch, it says, and it came to pass when the children of men had multiplied, and in those days there were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters, and the angels, the children of the heavens, which we call the children of God, the sons of God, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, come, let us choose us wives. So they sinned. These were fallen angels that came down and sinned against God, right? But for all we know, those fallen angels could have been the same characters that they're talking about here, right? Could have been the same characters. But let's get back to what Mr. Hall was talking about.
Over light and interacting with it. Once they're powered up, they're ready for high-speed maneuvers.
Let's get into
If they choose to go straight down the line of sight, they can go 7 miles at an average speed of 8,000 to 12,000 miles an hour, stop, power down, and set down. And in the process, they would have taken more than 15,000 Gs starting and 15,000 Gs stopping, just sitting there in the room like this. And in case you're wondering how much that is, 10,000 Gs will liquefy steel.
what's it? Is the speed of light is like 86,000 miles per hour?
186,000
186,000. Okay.
miles per second.
Miles per second.
And they can do,
So if they're going 8 to 10,000 miles per hour, there's still a massive difference between that and
they're not even in low
speed of light.
gear. They're not even in low gear.
Yeah, not even in low gear. Wow.
Yeah, if they do that and they choose to go sideways, they'll just seem to blink out. You'll be looking there and they'll just seem to disappear before your eyes, because they will have accelerated and moved to the side so fast your eyes can't follow. I speak from direct experience. And if you're looking up and straight up Indian Springs Valley and they choose to pop over to Dogbone Valley and come down and then come in one.
For those that don't understand, man, the nerd talk right here, there he's saying, like, this is some crazy physics right here. To be able to travel faster than the speed of light, they have to be able to travel 10 times the speed of light and able to reach the distances that they're traveling from, first of all, which we have no idea of how they're able to do those things. This is why every hearing, when you listen to the full hearing, every officer that spoke, he was like that the technology was crazy, because we have nothing that can compare to that. Nothing that moves anywhere near close to the speed of light. We can't do that, right? So what he's saying is, when you witness that, they have crafts that can actually move sideways, right? It can move from this spot here to this spot here so fast that you don't even see it. And you won't see it. And he says, to you, with your eyes, it'll just look like it blinked. And then all of a sudden, it transported to another spot. So it would look like instant transportation, like teleportation. Like, that's how it seemed to our eyes, because they're moving 10 times faster than the speed of light, which is impossible by anything of our standards. Like, we're just not able to do anything like that.
one of the northern passes to see what you're doing, it'll look like they just blinked out there and magically reappeared over there less than a second or two later, if they were in the hands of a skilled pilot. A lot of people who still believe in Einstein will mistakenly say they went to another dimension. Really, they haven't. They've done it. If you were in the way, the craft would run into you. There is no such thing as wormholes or warping space and time. What you're warping isn't space and time. You're interacting with other force fields that are all matter has. And, the same way that you might have an electric field of different shapes or a magnetic field of different shapes. But time never slows down. Time never runs in reverse. Time is just time. It always goes forward.
Have you ever flown in a craft?
Yes. Yeah. A couple of times I did.
What was that like?
Well, I was in the cargo hold at the time because there was, as I described in my books, the day after I thought I'd broken my kneecap and then it healed up, there was the next morning when they came down to get me and take me up to their base up at Area 53 to see if I needed a surgery on my knee.
And was it the tall whites?
Yeah, and when I got up there, the American generals were there, and medical people were up there too, and I didn't. I just bruised it, but they had to. The tall whites had to prove to the Americans that they were telling them the correct, or wanted to prove that, and so they came down and grabbed me and put me in the hold of the cargo shop, and I still remember the trip up there and the trip back.
So once again, he lived with the tall whites mostly, and experienced a lot of their technology. A lot of the tall whites were a group of alien beings that he claims lived near Area 51 for years. They've always been here since the early Ice Age. Due to his claims, he says that they have the most advanced technology out of any race of aliens that came down. Very interesting. Very interesting. So once again, we're making this correlation to ancient texts to what we know now, right? He talks about later on and through this interview, he talks about how we share technology. They kind of help us with understanding certain principles, things that we got wrong, understanding like subatomic particles and, just different things. Like here he talks about the goals and diplomatic relationships between us two.
Goals for us, or do you think they're just trying to engage in diplomatic relations?
Well, they came here in the middle of the last ice age because for the same reason that we have a base on Guam. The sun and the solar system exists in the middle of a huge void in space. The next closest star, Alpha Centauri or Proxima Centauri, is almost 4 light years away. Most stars, or many stars, have another star within 2 light weeks. Okay? It's not all unusual for many stars to be not more than a light year apart. For the sun, if you're going to cross that big void in space as you're conducting interstellar commerce for your own good, then it's nice to have a place in the middle, because that void is therefore something like 8 or 10 light years across, or 6 or 8, a big long light year. It's nice to have a place in the middle where you can stop and get food and water, go outside your spacecraft and repair it, where you can stop and rest, but also get minerals or other things that you might need.
So it's a pit stop.
As a pit stop.
Interesting.
And of course, the reason that there are many of their spacecraft doing that is because it is for the same reason that there are many Air Force planes that stop at Guam, because location.
What do you make
Now,
of?
if you're there, it's a big help if you have some locals who grow some food for you. They're plant eaters, the tall whites, as the grays are, and do the work of harvesting and hand you the food.
What do you make of rumors, stories that Ike Eisenhower, meeting possibly, Palm Springs, 1954, this treaty, you say five crafts showed up. There's another story called, Holloman Air Force Base, where there's a landing and there's a possible interaction between, some generals on the base and these tall beings, but they seem to actually have like almost pharaonic Egyptian headdress. And this video, I think, was promised at one point to Rod Serling and Bob Emenegger, who made UFOs Past, Present, and Future. And the video never came. But I've spoken to some pretty interesting people in the UFO whistleblower world who do stand by that account that was like a real meeting. Do you think that happened? And was it a tall white that came out of the craft at Holloman Air Force Base?
I'll maintain my policy of never commenting on other people's stories, and all
right, let's stop and pause it again. So now that we've heard his story, we've heard other stories, let's take a look at some more ancient literature and see what they have to say about all of this, right? Because the idea is to compare this, right? So we're going to look at one of the Sumerian documents that were left here. For those that don't know about the Sumerians and the Sumerian tablets, the Sumerian tablets are some of the world's oldest written records, some of the oldest. It's older than the Bible. It's older than anything on the earth known to earth. They're made of clay inscribed with cuneiform script by ancient Mesopotamian scribes starting around 3,000 years before Christ. 3,000 years before Christ. These tablets documented everything from legal codes and state affairs to daily accounts of commodities like gold, silver, and barley. Remember I told you about those grains, right? And even epic myths and literature and literary works. The use of durable clay in the system of cuneiform, a pictographic script that evolved into a syllabic system like hieroglyphics, right? So that's who the Sumerians and tablets were. So let's talk about the 7 tablets of the histories of creation. The first tablet, remember this is 3,000 years before Christ. When in the height heaven was not named, and the earth beneath did not yet bear a name, and the primeval Apsu, who begat them, and Chaos Tiamat, the mother of them both, their waters were mingled together, and no field was formed, no marsh was to be seen. One of the gods, none, had been called into being, and none bore a name, and no destinies were ordained. Then were created the gods in the midst of heaven. Right, we'll get on to that. He's talking about all these various beings. There's a spot where I want to talk about, really, where he talks about how they come to earth. He says, then by that day shalt thou have rest, by night shall no eye. Apsu hearkened to him, and countess grew bright. They planned evil against gods and his sons, right? What evil did they plot against their sons? Because of the evil which their firstborn had planned, something missing. These are pieces that are missing from the text, so we don't have them. There they altered lamentation. They sat in sorrow. What are they sorry about? For the decision that they made. We learned about what they did. They laid down with women as men did, and they created these giants, right? It says, for the gods did she create. They banded themselves together, right? Remember they said they made a pact. They made a pact. They said they was going to do this deed, and they were going to do it, and they don't care about the consequences. We learned about that in the Book of Enoch. It said that, and in the Book of Genesis, where it talk about the sons of God who laid with the women and bore these giants, right? So they talk about this big battle that came in the second tablet. Let me find actually the spot where it talks about when they came to earth. And why they came to earth. Because they came to earth for a specific reason. There's a specific reason. So one of the famous people that talks about this is Zachariah Stitchens, and then you got the other guy that came out that started talking about these things. But in these tablets, they talk about how they came to Earth and why they came to Earth. Let's see if I can find the exact spot. But until I find it, I'm going to let you hear some more of my man's account right here, Charles Hall.
The reason is because my books are based totally on my own experience.
Yep.
And it's not based on anything I've read or anything. They're not based on any classified material. I was never part of any project. They're based on when you say, what was life for me?
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do in my books, one of the major things I'm trying to do in my books is I'm trying to tell my grandkids how it was for me. And I'm trying to point out to them that when you're personally dealing with the extraterrestrials, you feel differently than when you're personally dealing with your guardian angels. Your guardian angels are like brothers who love you. There's never any fear with the sensation that your guardian angels are there with you, and because each of us, I believe, has two guardian angels at least, who are always with us and have nothing else to do but keep track of each one of us. And I get so frustrated when I see so many humans who mean well trying to confuse guardian angels and what God and love and the guardian angels are doing with what the biological entities who are extraterrestrials are doing. And that's what I'm trying to do in my book. I'm not trying to, I don't care what the government wants to classify. That's fine with me if they want to classify the recipe for Hershey candy bars and say, you can have one, Charlie, but don't tell anybody.
Do you miss the tall whites? Do you feel an emotional affection towards them? You said that you and Range 4 Harry were like brothers. Do you ever think, hey, maybe I could contact Range 4 Harry or go back and speak to him, go back to the range to Nellis?
Well, let's say if I were out in the desert, let's say out by Dale here in New Mexico, which is one of the tall white playgrounds. Let's say if I ever were out there and let's say I happen to see them, if I were to just say, well, I just wanted to, monkey around and see you or, whatever, well, that they might say, well, now you've seen us, and so go on about their business. See, they're very goal-oriented, even though they like us. And it's not that they're being rude. It's because, remember, the teacher in 1965, who had been born when George Washington was born, when she was over at Range 2 that Sunday with her daughter, who she called the Butterfly, and the little white girl that she wanted to be friends with her daughter because the little girls could be friends. She was standing there on the side in a very they were playing on the skip bomb area. And the two boys were playing also. She was standing a little ways away from them on the higher ground, slightly higher ground. She was very nostalgic, remembering her childhood, where she played on the same piece of ground with a little Native American girl who was equivalent to her age, 5 years old at the time. But her memories of that little Indian Native American girl that was her very best friend at the time, because they lived 10 times longer than we do, in the time that passed, while she went from equivalently being, say, in the 4th grade to the 7th grade, for us, those are just a few years. In that equivalent time, the Native American little girl grew to adulthood, got married, had children, went through her entire life cycle and died of old age, just in the time the teacher had gone through the equivalent lifestyle of from the 4th grade to the 7th grade.
Do you think they feel a fondness for humans? Like,
They do, but on the other hand, from their point of view, gee, I'm 80 years old right now. I'll be dead, and what for them is a blink of an eye. I don't know, even if I live to be 100, it's just 2 more, I only have 2 more years to live. So from their point of view, if I say we're out there at my age, they would, they might, I mean, they're friends, but you have to remember that socializing and being friends for them with humans is a little bit like us being friends and socializing with, say, a dog in its old age that we may not have seen for 5 or 10 years.
there's a guy at NASA who has a deep interest in these sorts of things, experiencers. His name is Timothy Taylor. Have you heard of him by any chance?
Did you say Timothy Taylor?
Yeah.
Oh, he's a good friend of ours.
Oh, so you know Timothy Taylor. Mm-hmm. Tim Taylor. This is one of those characters where, well, if you know, you know. But if you don't, there's probably a reason why the mood shifted here, folks. Tim Taylor was a NASA engineer who became a biotech entrepreneur, and according to Diana Pasulka's book American Cosmic, where he appeared under the pseudonym Tyler D, has remained actively involved in launch operations for NASA up until today. Pasulka paints Taylor as an enigmatic figure who led her and Stanford microbiologist Gary Nolan to a UFO crash site in New Mexico. By many, he's considered a gatekeeper, well-connected, with access to crash retrieval secrets, as well as personally receiving what he termed downloads of information from otherworldly sources. He claimed these downloads were facilitated by protocols he engaged in, protocols that allowed him to communicate with non-human intelligences. In Pasulka's book, Taylor undergoes a profound conversion in the Vatican archives, blending technology and the phenomena in what became a personal revelation.
And then he decided to convert. But also what happens is he changes his idea of what these things are that he's feeling, he's getting signals from.
Yeah, why does he change his mind? Because he starts to understand something different. So if we go to some of the ancient Sumerian tablets, this is what I was looking for, some of the myths from Mesopotamia. This is the Enuma Elish. This is one of the Sumerian literatures that was passed down, and this gives a story of the creation, the flood, Gilgamesh, and others. So this has come from the Atrahasis. This book starts off very interesting. Let me read some of it. It says, when the gods instead of man did the work. When the gods instead of man did the work. See, when they first came down, they said when they first came down, there was nothing here. It was empty. It was formless. There was void. There was nothing here. There was no resources, nothing. So they're talking about a time before man. It says, instead of man, the gods did the work. So they bore the load. It says the gods' load was too great. They're like, yo, we working too hard, man. This is crazy. It's too great. Let me blow this up so y'all can read more. Is that better for y'all? Hopefully that's better for y'all. Blow it up some more. Right, let me see what that looks like. Hopefully y'all can see this. Let me get y'all on the screen. So now y'all on page, right? So when the gods instead of man did the work, they bore all the loads. The gods' load was too great. The gods. Remember, even the Bible, it tells you, one of the commandments says, you should not worship any other god before me. Meaning there were multiple gods. You should not worship any other god before me. That was a commandment. Why would there be a commandment if there weren't no other gods around? So this lets you know. And these are small g's because they're not really gods, right? They were gods to us at that time because we didn't understand nothing. We didn't, we were babies in this thing. called life, new to this universe, new to this existence. They come here with all this technology that we ain't never seen before, right? So it says the work was too hard, the trouble too much. The great Anunnaki made the Ijiji carry the workload sevenfold. The great Anunnaki were a race of beings who basically controlled things. They were the rulers, and they had another race of people who were their slave class called the Ijiji. See, this is where we get the slave class from. That didn't just start out of nowhere. That wasn't just a thing that we just invented ourselves. This is something that we learned. Right? So the Anunnaki had a slave class called the Ijiji. The Ijiji carried the workload sevenfold, 7 times. Anu, their father, was the king. So that's how the Anunnaki were in charge, because Anu was the king. He was the top dog. Their counselor warrior was Enlil. Their chamberlain was Naruto. The canal controller Enuji. They took the box of lots, cast the lots. The gods made the vision. Anu went up to the sky, and Enlil took the earth for his people. The bolt which bars the sea was assigned to far-sighted Enki. When Anu had gone up to the sky and the gods of the Apsu had gone below, the Anunnaki of the sky made the Ijiji bear the workload. The gods had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land. Remember, Mr. Hall told us that these beings were plant eaters, that they were vegetarians, right? Here we see they had to create that fertilization of the land. So they taught us how to dig canals, right? So they were digging canals before we knew anything about canals, right? They had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land. The Ijiji had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land. The gods dug out the Tigris riverbed. The gods dug out the Tigris riverbed. So we see here that the Tigris River and they dug out the Euphrates River were 2 rivers that they created. They created them to be what they are. And we have some missing text. It says blank in the deep, blank and they set up, blank in the Apsu, blank of the land, blank inside of it, blank raised its tops, blank of all the mountains. They were counting the years of loads. So basically they was doing a whole lot of work. That's basically what I'm getting out of that. And then it says blank the great marsh. They were counting the years of loads. For 3,600 years they bore the excess hard work night and day. For 3,600 years the Ijiji were slaving, working hard, man, creating an environment so that they can live here. They groaned and blamed each other, grumbled over the masses of excavated soil. Let us confront our blank, the chamberlain. That must be the boss. Let us confront our boss, the chamberlain, and get him to relieve us of our hard work. Come, let us carry the blank, the Lord, the counselor of gods, the warrior from his dwelling. Come, let us carry Enlil, the counselor of gods, the warrior from his dwelling. And then Allah made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. Gap about 8 lines. Come, let us carry the counselor of gods, the warrior from his dwelling. Come, let us carry Enlil, the counselor of gods, the warriors from his dwelling. Now cry to battle. Let us mix fight with battle. The gods listened to his speech, set fire to their tools, put aside their spades for fire. So basically they was mad, man. And they went to the boss, man. They went to complain, man. So they made him get out the bed. They like, my lord, your house is surrounded. A rabble is running around you. They revolting. They like, yo, we tired of working, basically. That's basically what he said to him. So basically a big war started. They start going back and forth. But eventually they come together and they kind of work it out. And they work it out with basically they're going to find another way for y'all. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to make another way. And this better way is going to help y'all. And we're going to create a class of beings that we can just dominate and rule over them. And we can teach them to do the work that y'all don't want to do. Right? He said, then let the man bear the load of the gods. See, that was the conclusion of their argument. Right? That was the conclusion of their argument. Let her create primeval man, so that he may bear the yoke. This is their account of how we came to be. Now, I know that's hard for a lot of people to hear and a lot for people to understand or whatever the case may be. And I don't necessarily say that I agree with it, but this is just what I found in the studies. It's just what I found in the studies. And when you look at these names, Elil, Enlil, and you break those down, they sound mighty similar to the original Hebrew names for the Most High, right? So just to cross-reference these things that we know. So they create man. How? She said, let the womb goddess create offspring, and let man bear the load of the gods. They called up the goddess, asked the midwife of the gods, wise mammy, you are the womb goddess to be the creator of mankind. Which is to be the creator of mankind. Create primeval man, that he may bear the yoke. Let him bear the yoke, the work of Elil. Let man bear the load of the gods. Nintu made her voice heard and spoke to the great gods. It is not proper for me to make him, the work of Inkis. Inki was the top of the gods. When you translate Inki's name, man, that's kind of different topic too, man. Translate his name. Enki was the Sumerian god of wisdom, fresh water, crafts, fertility, and magic, also known as Ea in Akkadian mythology. He was depicted as a benevolent deity who often used cleverness and trickery to benefit humanity. Enki played a significant role in creation myths, including the idea of creating humans to do the labor of the gods, and was a cultural hero who gave humanity tools for civilization. Enki's name actually means Lord of the Earth, and his primary domains were fresh waters. Who else was considered the Lord of the Earth? I don't know if y'all ready for that. But anyway, he makes everything pure. If he gives me clay, then I will do it. Enki made his voice heard, and he spoke to the great gods. On the 1st, 7th, and 15th of the month, I shall make a purification by washing. Then one god should be slaughtered, and the gods can be purified by immersion. So we see the sacrifice rituals also once again. But let's keep going. I want y'all to see something further down, man. So you can see how she actually became to be, right? And what they do with the things that they taught us. You know what I mean? So here we see, for the womb goddess is the creator of faith, blah, blah, blah. And two presents Mammy made these rules for people. In the house of a woman who is giving birth, the mud brick shall be put down for 7 days. Bled to Tilly, wise Mammy shall be honored. The midwife shall rejoice in the house of the woman who gives birth. And when the woman gives birth to the baby, the mother of the baby shall sever herself, a man to a girl, blank, blank, blank to her bosom. A beard can be seen on a young man's cheek. In gardens and wayside, a wife and her husband choose each other. The womb goddess were assembled, and Nintu was present. They counted the months, called up the 10 months as the term of fates. That they decided 10 months was how long at the most that a baby should go to full term, not 9. So that's interesting too. When the 10th month came, she slipped in, and the staff opened the wound. Her face was glad and joyful. She covered her head, performed the midwifery, put on her belt, said a blessing. She made a drawing in flour and put down in mud brick. I myself created it. My hand made it. The midwife shall rejoice in the house of the Kadishtu priestess. Wherever a woman gives birth and the baby's mother severs herself, the mud brick shall be put down for 9 days. Nintu, the womb goddess, shall be honored. She shall call there something Mammy. She shall blank, the womb goddess, lay down the linen cloth. When the bed is laid out in their house, a wife and her husband shall choose each other. So they're just basically teaching them the first cultural traditions of man and wife, right? Childbearing, things like that, relationships. You know, they're teaching them the basics of life. And they do this for many years until they cultivate mankind. This is how they account for how we got here. So I just wanted to show you this. I'm not going to read all of this to y'all. You got to do your own study. You get time to study for y'all. But if you read some of these older texts and then listen to what these men are saying, listen to what these men are saying and this House committee, I mean, you might start thinking a little different too.
Consistently. And you had, you reported James Lakatsky came to you with government possession of NHI craft and how they ultimately gained entry. Can you testify to the veracity of that claim?
Dr. Lakatsky is an honorable man who served most of his career with the DIA, a very trusted, high-level rocket scientist and intelligence analyst who inspired the OSAP program, as I said earlier. And in full disclosure, I've co-written 2 books with him. He dropped this on myself and our other co-author out of the blue. And it took 14 months for us to get DOPSR approval for him to release 2 sentences on that. He said this craft, we had managed to get inside of it. It had no wings, no rotor, no tail. It had no fuel tanks. They didn't know how it flew or how it was operated. It looked like it was aerodynamic, but he would not go further. He's a by-the-book guy, and until he gets clearance to say more about that, I don't think we're going to hear much more. But it's not ours. It wasn't ours. We didn't make it. We didn't know who made it and how it was built and how it operated. We've got at least one, and I don't know. I think that's enough confirmation that we do have recovered discs and material.
Mr. Knapp, I've watched many of your videos on Joe Rogan and other places. One of the big questions, I think, for many of us is why do you believe that the federal government refuses to be transparent about this issue?
I think there's probably multiple reasons. At the start, when these things first started invading our skies in large numbers, we were scared. It was right after World War II, and we didn't know what they were, and they didn't want to panic the public, and that was probably a good call. Over time, I think the lying sort of became institutionalized, Flights over Washington, D.C. in 1952, they're seen, they're captured on radar.